That's my favorite scene in the series. And
Mm.
it's because I wished someone had done that for me.
Mm.
But in that moment, I mean, I laid on the floor many times. And I was made out to be the bad person. Even the court system gaslit me.
Welcome to Book Reporter Talks To, where our guest today is Stephanie Land, the author of the New York Times bestseller, Maid, Hard Work, Low Pay, and a Mother's Will to Survive. I had the pleasure of interviewing Stephanie for 2 pre-publication interviews in 2018. And then when Maid was published in 2019, it was instantly selected as a Bookreporter Bets On Selection. Now, Netflix recently released a brilliant 10-part series based on the book, and the book is now back on the bestseller list. So we thought, what better time to reconnect with Stephanie? So welcome. It's so nice to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me. I have fond memories of talking to you a few years ago.
Trip down memory lane. So let's shoot back to the beginning here, because I actually went back and I was like, what was the genesis of this book? And there was an essay in 2015 on Vox that went viral, and it was the kernel for the memoir. You'd then be a writer for years. And were you thinking of it being a longer piece or a book at some point? Or were you just trying to say, this is what I'm going through, folks, right now?
Well, I was honestly just trying to make some money. And I was trying to get started as a freelance writer. The book that I was working on was much different, and it was more focused on the storyline of leaving Washington and graduating from college in Montana. And the housekeeper piece was just an essay that I wrote in college that my professors really liked, and I pitched it to Vox, and I even titled the email like "Dear Editor," and and here's a couple paragraphs from a thing that I wrote, and I did not expect anyone to pay any attention to it at all. I actually had another essay coming out the next day, and I was more worried about that one than I was about the one on Vox. So when that book came out, and I had some agents contact me who were interested, and they said, like, or when the essay came out, not the book, and so they were talking to me about this essay that went viral, and they're like, so you're going to write a book about being a house cleaner. And I was like, well, no, I really don't want to do that.
Not my goal.
Yeah. And they said, well, that's the book that you need to write. So, the story that I wanted to write is kind of like hidden in, this voyeurism of working in other people's houses. I really wanted to get the social justice, the domestic violence, living in poverty, being a single mom. There were a lot of agendas that I had that were wrapped up in a title like Maid.
And I have to tell you that it's one of those books that has stayed with me. I've thought about it so many times. There are moments where I'll be doing something and I'm thinking, is this the right thing to do? Should I be doing more? I find that I am more attuned right now, like during the pandemic, when a number of service workers all lost their jobs. I was thinking of all these people applying for assistance. How is that going to go? Reading how difficult it was for you to be doing that. And now you've got so many more millions of people floating into this at the same time. And you really opened my eyes, because I thought you just go apply, you get this, no idea the steps along the way. And I think that was extremely eye-opening for a reader to just sit there and say, well, wait a second, you think that this is just something that's being handed out. No, it's kind of being earned. And it's not exactly the way you're thinking about it.
Yeah, it came to be, a part-time job, just filling out all the paperwork, going to the appointments with caseworkers that were in the middle of the workday. So I had to take off work to try and get, what comes to be about $1 a meal per person per day. And it's just, I have had people kind of tell me that I should have been more thankful in the book about the services that I was receiving. And of course I was grateful for it, because otherwise we would have been very hungry. But it's hard to say thank you for something like that when it's so degrading and so demeaning. And you are, I mean, I felt like I was a leech on society, and felt like that every single minute of the day, because so much of my worth was wrapped up in how many hours I was able to work in a week. And I wasn't able to call in sick, never had vacation pay or any kind of benefits whatsoever. And my work was not trustworthy. It was not stable. It was a very, very insecure life in every aspect.
And this might be controversial, but when we were talking about vaccines and people get vaccinated or not, my son brought up a point and he said, this is people that have to leave a day of work where they may not be paid for to go get the vaccination. And he said, and if they get sick the next couple of days, who's going to pay them? And he said, it's a very radical way of thinking about this. But when you're sitting there saying we're going to pay $100 or whatever, you have to understand these people aren't making any money on those days. And I thought it was very intuitive of him to be bringing that up at this point about what was going on. Yeah. So instead of Netflix presenting Maid as a docudrama, which it could have been, it's fictionalized. And going in, how did you feel about it being, fictionalized? Did you have a vision of what it was going to be on screen, or it was the same thing as the piece turning into the book? I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Well, I talked to a lot of producers, actually. I think I had about 10 phone calls, and John Wells and Margot Robbie were the ones that I talked to last. And everybody up until that point just wanted to make a movie that was a pure adaptation of the book. And every time that they talked about that, I heard the movie trailer guy, like the voiceover saying like one white woman's dip into poverty and how she got herself out. And that's just not what I wanted. I wanted diversity, and I wanted to be able to expand on my story. Because when you're writing memoir, you're kind of stuck with yourself and your own experience. Yeah. And I was in a very white area and I didn't get out much. And so like usually at this point, I point to the book and say it's literally white. And so I loved that they brought up the aspect of fictionalizing it. I don't really think in fiction. So I left it up to them. And I was glad that I did that, because otherwise I would have been like, no, but that didn't happen. And like, so I would have been nitpicky and kind of stressed, but they did a fantastic job. And they made the series look like the real world looks. And instead of this like pocket of Northwest Washington, where there's not too many other people than a bunch of white people walking around. So
I did like the ferry scenes though. Like, we've got to get to the ferry pass, all these things. And you realize those were all challenges of getting the timing right. You could miss the ferry, what would end up happening. It's clear that both John Wells, who was an executive producer, and Molly Smith Meltzer, the screenwriter, captured the heart and soul of the book. I mean, it's so clear. How much time did you spend with them? Like just walking them through things that had happened? Did you spend time on these locations or whatever?
I did not go on set. It was, COVID, and they were filming in Canada, and Canada requires a 2-week quarantine. And my kids were all doing remote school, and I didn't want to leave my husband for that long. It just didn't seem fair. And who wants to quarantine for 2 weeks? I was amazed that the entire cast and crew did that. What I did do though was 2 years ago, John Wells and Molly Smith Metzler and Aaron Jontow, which is another executive producer, they flew up to the Seattle area, and Molly calls it the trauma tour, because we drove around to all of these like shady places that I lived in, like the trailer, and shared like 200 pictures with them, and like just gave them access to my Google photos basically. And they asked me hundreds of questions. I just, and they were really interested in my relationship with my kid's dad, and a lot of the emotional abuse that I experienced, because I didn't really feature that in the book too much. I just, I didn't want to give him the space on the page. And I knew that my kid was going to read it someday. So I really liked what they were interested in. And they've all become really good friends. I have an event with Molly tonight that I'm really excited about. So
you can tell that they definitely felt what you were going through and they understood it. And yes, there are things that were not on the page, but you feel like it wasn't a complete departure. Like sometimes you go and there's this big leap and it really wasn't. I really love the part where on screen at different parts, the viewer can see the calculation of how much money Alex, who plays your role there, has on hand. And it's never a lot. And I thought was really impactful. I also liked that I didn't have to do the math, that they were doing it for me. So how did you find it after years of you doing that math, actually seeing on screen, like, this is what she's going through. This is really where her head is right now.
It was really powerful. And it was a great way to, I mean, I've heard from people that stressed them out. And I was like, great, that's what it's supposed to do. I thought one of the many challenges that the series was going to have was just showing how it feels to have $2 in your pocket or less. And that was one way that they very visually showed, even though you're walking into a job interview and they say, we pay this much. And if you think, oh, good, full time, that's going to be $500 a week. And then by the end, it's like, she's almost negative because she has to buy her own supplies and pay for her uniform. And it's just like this work that people think is so easy and simple to do because everybody knows how to clean their own house. I mean, presumably. So it's, we call it low skilled work but it's really not. And it's a terrible job. It's a precarious job. And it's one that does not support you very much.
No, and also the other thing is too, a lot of the assistance comes with so many strings attached to it. So when you would go food shopping, and I remember this, it was the EBD cards and the Wix coupons, and you'd be checking out and they go, no, you can't have that food. Like you can't buy that milk. You can buy this milk and you can do this. And there were all these things that were embarrassing moments on top of the fact you don't have money. It's you're presenting this card and you still can't have it. You still can't do this. Has anything changed on that front, or are we still in that ridiculous situation?
I don't know exactly, but I assume that that's still the same. Like you can't have any on food stamps. You can't have any prepared food. It doesn't cover like prepared food that's been warmed up. Like you can't get a whole roasted chicken when it's under the heater thing, but you can get the day old roasted chicken that is refrigerated. So it's just so weird. And of course, like no diapers, no feminine hygiene products, which a lot of people need and don't have money for. And WIC programs, I have heard that instead of checks, they now have cards, like a debit card. But I assume that they still have all of the very, very specific things that you can purchase and not purchase. And it's always changing. And that program was, I don't know, to me, it came across as kind of body shaming because like you had to be weighed and measured and because it's a quote unquote nutrition program, but you could only get sweet potatoes and not white potatoes because it's assumed that people like cook potatoes with butter. And so it was a strange program.
I was also watching when Alex bought on the show. I just have to tell you, when she was checking out, I was looking at the groceries and going, was anything going to get returned? We'll have to see, And it's interesting in New York right now, a lot of the drugstores are people are taking the tampons and the diapers off the shelves and stealing them. That's what's being stolen. And it really makes sense if you can't get them under any other kind of aid. You can see why that would end up happening. My husband and sons tease me that like I clean like a mad woman before the cleaning woman arrives. I just run around the house and they're constantly telling me, and I did this before reading the book, but even more so vigilantly afterwards. And they joke that I say, you feel like you're being judged. And I said, I am. So tell me, am I really being judged by these people that come in my house and want to see, are they really looking?
I would doubt you're being judged, but I will say that picking up the clutter saves a lot of time. And you as a client get a better clean for that because they don't have to move everything around. I don't know if I judged people. I think like if the toilet was like in really, really bad shape, like to the point where I was embarrassed for them, then I got a little judgy. But I mean, for the most part, like I don't think people really understand that a house cleaner is there to clean the surfaces, not move everything around so they can get to that surface.
Mhm.
And so it just makes their job a lot easier. And usually they only have the set amount of time that they're supposed to be in your house. And if they go over or under, they could get in trouble or possibly even fired. So so it was really great when people cleaned up beforehand. I enjoyed that.
I'm quoting you tomorrow morning. I'm quoting you tomorrow morning to the boys. I'm like, okay, this is why we do this. Is it hard for you to engage people to come in and help you around the house doing anything after doing this? Like, do you want to pitch in? Like, let me go help?
With my house?
Yes.
No. No.
Do it.
I have 2 teenagers. Like, the chore list is long. So no, I mean, everybody pitches in here, especially after being home for the last 18 months together. Like, it just no break. And you know, we have 5 people and 3 dogs in a 2,000 square foot house, which I know in like New York standards is huge, but in Missoula, Montana, it's not. So yeah, it's dirty all the time, and I'm exasperated by it, and I've just given up.
Would you have qualms about bringing somebody in? If you brought somebody in from the outside to help, would it be like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. I want to help them. I want to help the help, you know?
Yeah, I have gone back and forth about that. My husband needs to have some pretty serious spine surgery coming up, and you know, of course, I still need to work and take care of the house and stuff. And people have said like, well, just get a house cleaner. And so I was going through it in my mind of like, well, how do I really feel about that? We did hire a person to help us move, like do the move in clean and the move out clean and stuff like that. But I don't think I can. I think because I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot. And I think it's because for me, what it comes down to is not that I don't respect the work or I don't respect the worker, but there's just something about being on your hands and knees in someone's house and they're still walking around. And that was especially when there was like a strange man in the house, like that was a really vulnerable place for me to be in. And the way that it felt in that moment for me personally, and you know, I might be projecting all of my feelings onto a person who really enjoys their job, but I don't think I can do it. I wish I could.
Maybe next week I'll try that. We'll see. You know, Margaret Qualley, who plays you, is in almost every scene of the adaptation. And I felt like she captured your anguish and fear, her face, like so many times, as well as the emotional toll of mental spousal abuse. Everybody always thinks about physical, but that moment where Alex doesn't have a phone, that moment where, you know, these things are going on. And I think the scene that really got me the most was where Alex is lying on the floor in the domestic violence shelter, and she's lost her daughter for a week. And she's just like completely bereft on the floor, and somebody's saying, get up. You just got to get up off that floor. Were there people who pulled you back up, like what we saw on the show?
You know, that's my favorite scene in the series. And it's because I wished someone had done that for me. But in that moment, I mean, I laid on the floor many times. And I was made out to be the bad person. You know, even the court system gaslit me. And I lived in a very small town. Port Townsend only has, you know, 3,000 people in the city limits. And people would stop me at the post office and tell me how horrible I was for doing what I was doing, for leaving you know, what the court referred to as a stable home. The judge in open court said a reasonable person wouldn't feel threatened by his actions. He was made out to be the better parent because he had a job and he had a house that he had just kicked me out of. And so it's so backwards, especially with emotional abuse. And it's not considered domestic violence at all. And you have to kind of like prove to somebody. I mean, I guess I was lucky that he punched out a window in the house so that I could call the police. And it was like finally I had a police report that said like he's doing bad things to me, and I carried that around for validation for weeks. And it's a really deadly form of abuse. It's one where by the time they get to the point where they are getting physical and they are getting physically violent, not only does the physical violence escalate so fast, but you're stuck with nothing because you've been isolated. You've been isolated from your friends and family. You know, we saw in the series, she doesn't have a phone, she doesn't have money. He took away her car. There's really nothing that you can do to get help.
And you saw also when she's going in and she's trying to file, they go, well, did this happen? Nope. Did you file the report? Nope. And it was such a good scene of, wait, I've got to do this. There's a lot of swearing that goes on that I won't do, but it was like really so to the point of, this is where I am right now. I'm in this really bad place and you can't help me get out because I didn't do boo, boo, boo. Like I have to follow the steps. So I don't know. The first episode also on screen includes an accident that usually comes up much later in the book. And it completely caught me off guard. I was watching like one of the early previews and I was like, whoa. But for visual storytelling, it's completely arresting because it gets you right into just how bad Alex is. Like if you had any questions going in, folks, here you are right now. With these new interpretations, what was it like seeing the tough parts unfold? Because it's not in the same place. It's moved around and whatever.
It was hard. I mean, I watched the first 2 episodes with my kid Story, who is in the book. They go by their middle name now. And we watched it on my laptop, like in bed under blankets. And it was really difficult for both of us. For them, it was really hard to see very visually what type of character their dad is. And because they captured him pretty well. And for me, it was, you know, as soon as I saw her stick that mermaid doll out the window, I was just like, oh no, like it's too soon. And it was really traumatic for me and for Story to watch. It was really triggering. Now that I've seen it, you know, 2 or 3 times, like it's a little less and less, but every once in a while, like a scene will pop up on my Instagram feed or something. And it's just like, it startles me. And, you know, I, because I didn't really mention the emotional abuse directly in the book, I didn't really talk about it that much on book tour. And I haven't really talked about it in the last few years. And, but now this series came out and that's like the focus. And so I'm talking about it a lot more. And it's really affecting me and in ways that I kind of figured it wouldn't, because I feel like I'm so far removed from it. Like he doesn't scare me anymore, but just watching her character tell him, you will never control me again. Like I wished I could have said that, you know.
But it was a different time in some ways. It was, maybe that was a couple of years ago. You were in a different place, and you sort of have to sit there and say, okay, this is what was going on at the time. But I really felt that as I was watching through, I confess, I watched the first episode twice. I watched it at the screening and I watched it again. I watched the first 5 together, and then it was 2:00 in the morning. I had to go to bed. And then I watched the whole rest the next night. And then I watched 9 and 10 again. And that's how much I was really vested of what did I see? What did I miss? Like what, because I thought it was just so well done. And I have not done that with any other Netflix series. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I've never done that. But I felt also that I love the way some of the things stayed, like the way you named the houses, the porn house, the house. There were things like that just gave it that, besides the other tough edge, it gave it this kind of humor kind of edge to the whole thing and made Alex so much more real. Am I right in like feeling that too?
Yeah. When they originally started calling it a dramedy, I was like, what's a dramedy? It's going to be funny. And Molly has said in interviews, like, well, the book is just not humorous at all. So like, I had to add humor to it to keep the audience interested and invested in the character. And I loved what they did. Molly calls them pop outs when it, like when she's in court and everybody starts saying the word legal over and over again.
Yes.
And Alex is just sitting there like deer in the headlights because she has no idea what's going on. So on one side it's funny, but on the other it's like, yes, that is exactly what it was like. So I thought they did an excellent job with bringing humor into it. And I love the scenes where they're singing the Shoop song as they're driving in the car. And because that's how parenting is, you know, you end up singing Baby Got Back when your kid can't sleep or something.
But it was really funny because she knew all the words. The little girl knew all the words of the song. And I was like so impressed, Natty, go for it. And she was doing her little hand actions and whatever. And I thought for a child that age to learn all those words was really pretty good. I thought she did, you know. And I also, I remember hearing Margaret talking about how she was in every scene, but she's a child and you're trying to carry her and get her from point A to point B. And you realize she is still acting, but she is still that age. And I said, that had to be a challenge. We're just getting her to be in her role. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Margaret and Riley spent a lot of time together. Margaret spent like almost all of her off time just hanging out with Riley and getting to know her and making sure that they had a really close relationship. Because I mean, if you watch it, I mean, she's kissing this 3-year-old over and over again. And Riley called Margaret her pretend mommy. And you can just tell, I mean, if I don't think the series would have been as good if their relationship wasn't so believable.
It was completely believable. And the way she was in every scene, but even then when she gets strong, when she's outside making the phone calls, trying to get into college and get what she wants, and you see her getting so assertive about what she's doing. I want that class. I want this. Who do I need to talk to? And you see her personality emerging. And that was nice to see too. It was really good.
Yeah, I have thought about that scene quite a bit. And to me, that really shows the privileged position that she was in. I mean, just for her to be able to talk to people in an assertive and professional manner, for her to have the space and time and mental and emotional ability to do that. You know, like I don't think I could have even done that at that time. Just the amount of calls that she makes and how she says, okay, can you get that information for me, please? Like that takes some balls. But I mean, that's also a white woman talking on the phone to administrators and at a university. And so, yeah, I've been taking some deep dives into that scene quite a few times over the last couple of weeks.
Well, you know, I'm also thinking of too, is she was also in a place where she was safe to be able to go do that. She was being taken care of. She was being fed. A lot of things had started. So what we can think about is if people have that safety net around them, how much more can they advocate for themselves in a positive, moving ahead way instead of a just getting dinner tonight way. And I think that that's what the scene was showing me is if we give people the safety net, where do they go from there? Where can we go when we're not worried about like the basics, like we're going to sleep tonight? Are we going to get hit tonight? What's going to happen? So that was the scene, seeing that. Yeah.
When I finally moved into low income housing, that was when I could relax a little and really focus on writing and freelancing. Housing insecurity is all encompassing 24 hours a day, especially when you have kids. So just having some kind of security that you can depend on for any amount of time is huge.
Really, really works. So the book ends, you're heading to Montana. In the series, you've arrived. You've climbed the W, which I really loved. In the year since the book story ended, you had another child, you married, and you're a stepmother now too. Do you feel content now, or there's still guarded feelings of what's next?
Oh, I'm always going to be worried about money. I mean, because I'm the breadwinner of a family of 3 kids that, you know, I would hope to be able to put through college, or at least somewhat, hopefully. College is so expensive. So I bought a house in Missoula last year. But I mean, it's still just like the furnace is breaking and there's a bunch of repairs that we need to do. Like, I don't really have a steady paycheck. So like I have amounts of money come in, but then it's like, okay, how long is that going to last? So I feel a lot of pressure to stay interesting is it's a very blunt way of putting it, but I mean,
Yeah.
I need people to be interested in what I need to say. So it's, as an introvert, it's a job that I didn't really expect to have. And I'm just trying to do the best I can with it.
Just keep going, folks. Let's just keep going. I heard you say that one luxury of being more comfortable today is that you can tip better. Like you really like to tip when you go out to eat and things like that. Is that like such a great feeling to be able to say, I can take care of you here right now?
Yeah. I was talking to my therapist a whole bunch about how I wasn't really able to celebrate things or to enjoy things. Because in the past, whenever I told myself like, wow, this is really great. This is great. That's when something bad would happen. So I figured out that it's not being able to go out to eat. It is being able to leave a 40% tip or 50%, or I always tell myself like, I want the tip to be big enough that they're going to talk to their coworkers about it.
Yep. They're going to feel good about it. Real good. You know, you've been doing this really fun thing with readers on social media, sharing photos and videos. Like if you watch the show, okay, here's my daughter learning to walk. Like this was the first opening line of the book. She learned to walk in a homeless shelter. And the days you talk about are shown there. And even in the bleakest days, you show these moments of joy, be it when your daughter learned to walk, or later on when you're doing this little thing with hermit crabs. And she is just so excited. And she's counting like we saw Maddie counting in the show. And it was like 1, 2, 3, and very advanced for her age, I felt, as far as skill set was sharing these special moments kind of part of a plan? Or as you're hearing from people, you're like, wait a second, I've got a picture that I want to show you, because it's been so much fun to be involved with this.
I think originally I have been sharing, and I think it started out, I shared the My Little Ponies because the My Little Ponies are like maybe mentioned once or twice in the book, but I sent all these pictures to Molly and John, and so they recreated that whole scene, and I loved it. I think that was the first time I cried, and excuse me, and but I started to get thousands of followers on Instagram. I think it's currently I've gained 30,000 followers, and they were going through a lot of posts and liking them. And the ones that they were liking were the pictures of me and my kid, and ones that I had shared previously as I was, going through book tour and kind of processing, talking about that life or that time of my life a lot. And so I asked a friend, I said, if there's any picture that you would want to see of, the real version of what happened in the series, like what would it be? And they said, I hate to say it, but the car accident. and so I was like, yeah, that's a good point. And so I shared those photos on social media, and it just kind of grew. I have so many pictures because I wasn't always able to sit and write about things. But I was very thankful to have this kind of dinky digital camera that didn't have much storage in it. So I had to find friends' computers to download all the photos into Picasa or Google Photos or whatever. And I really enjoy looking through those photos. Like me and Story are looking through them, and they love them too. And full permission from them to share all of their baby pictures.
So great. How is she feeling? Like she's in school now or whatever, when people are sitting there talking about this, what's her feeling about it? Because it is a dramatization or whatever, or what's she talking about with it?
I've been asking her, have people been talking to you about it a lot? I think she has a couple of teachers who are really excited about it. And she seems to be coping with it pretty well. I don't think it's a main topic in her conversations. I mean, she's in middle school, so she has enough to deal with. But yeah, she thinks it's really cool whenever Nick Robinson mentions me in his Instagram stories. That's when it's like, this is so cool, Mom.
Mom, you're really doing it now.
Yeah. So, but I mean, they've been in this with me for years. And so now it's just kind of yeah, that's cool. And I'm talking about like, I'm chatting with Andy McDowell on Instagram and they're just like, oh yeah. And
Come on.
so
All right. That's
I've
fine,
been,
Ma. Whatever, no problem. No problem.
yeah.
I love that the book has come back on the bestseller list. I mean, it actually made my night when I saw that. Those who watch the series can learn something completely different in the book. There's so much more in the book in a lot of ways because you can get into things you can't delve into on the screen. What do you want people to take away from the book that is different from on screen? Like, are there other things that you want to say somebody go out and read the book and this is where I'm going to get a little bit more in depth, or this is where you're going to feel a little bit differently? What's your feeling on that?
Well, I think the book really goes into the loneliness of the job, and the isolation, and how much comfort I got and emotional support just from a stranger's bathtub, and how, I don't know, just how much of a struggle it was just to get up in the morning and drive to work. There were days that we drove 100 miles, and get home at night and not be able to tap out. And it is always on you, no matter what is going on. I mean, every once in a while, I got some sense of relief when Story went to their dad's, but I was usually pretty worried about their time there. And I worked the whole entire time they were gone too. So in writing the book, I wanted people to know that single mothers are actually very attentive parents. And just because they can't show up to school events doesn't mean they don't care. And just how hard they work and how much they love their kids and how hard people who are on government assistance are actually working. I mean, 70% of the people on food stamps are working families with kids, and 1 in 4 kids are still going hungry in this country. And I don't understand that. I don't understand the lack of humanity and empathy in allowing people to go hungry.
Yeah. And it's basics. I mean, you talked about the days that this was all you were going to have to eat all day. This is all that was going to happen. I think a lot of that is in the book. You don't quite see in the film the same way of you trying to divide something up to go to be 7 days, or even the scene with mold. While we saw it and you think it would play through differently, but you writing about that and realizing your daughter's getting sick, this is what you have to do. How am I going to do it? I think there's, I'm saying to anybody who watched the show, go back and read the book. Like, seriously, there's a lot more to delve into there. So what's next for you once this media tour, which, what you say, 190 countries this show is showing in right now, which is incredible. I love when Netflix drops, it's like 190 countries at, midnight on a certain day, and there you go from there. So what's next? What do you want to next?
Well, I have a book that I have been supposed to be writing for my dear editor. I love her so much. She has been so supportive, because having 3 kids and 3 dogs and a husband at home and the pandemic, and it doesn't make for good writing. So I do have a book that I'm working on. It's called Class, and it focuses on the lack of access that low-income people have to higher education and the barriers that are in place to kind of keep people out of higher education, I think. And so I'm still kind of going over what kind of format it's going to be in, whether it's going to be memoir or narrative nonfiction. And yeah, I don't know, the Netflix series has kind of suddenly given me some more freedom on what I want to write. And so I am just kind of sitting with that right now. I mean, that's never really happened to me before. So yeah, but I do have a book that will be out eventually.
Eventually. Did I hear that there might be a she shed in your future too for writing? Did I hear that might be happening?
I think it's supposed to be delivered like today or tomorrow. You don't know with the shipping stuff, but yeah, I ordered this shed off the internet, and it's going to be awesome. So I can't wait, because so much writing is just staring at a wall and just sitting in silence and getting some alone time. And I do not get that at all.
It's also, if you're staring at the wall, the kids will come in and ask you a question because you're just staring at the wall, and they don't realize you're staring at the wall to write the next sentence. No, they think you're staring at the wall trying to decide what to make them for dinner. Like, it's no concept of what's going on. Yeah. I can't wait to see the pictures of the she shed. I'm like so ready for that for you, for sure. So
thank you.
Look, as
Yeah.
always, thank you for joining us today. It was so great to see you again. I feel like I've gone like full circle with this, and I'm so excited about sharing this portion of the interview with our readers as well.
Thanks so much, Carol. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
And to our readers, look forward to seeing you next time on Book Reporter Talks To.